I'm here today with Jois. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Jois. I'm Erica, co-worker at the ARC. I'm a fourth year business economics major, and I'm Vietnamese. I moved to the US in 2015 when I was 15 years old with my parents and my older brother, and he's like 9 years older than me.
Nice to meet you, Jois. I would like to ask the first question. That would be, what would you say motivates you, or what are your future dreams or current dreams? Would you say that your parents play a huge role in why you decided to pursue higher education?
I decided to pursue higher education because my parents, they left everything that I had in Vietnam to move to the US for me to have a better future in them. And my ultimate goal is to retire them early. So by the time I graduate from college, trying to get a stable job and then earn a high income, hopefully get a high income job and then save up, get a house, and then retire them. That's my ultimate goal.
Do you think your parents have played a role, though, in how you kind of hold yourself in education, or like your attitude towards education? Do you think you take it more seriously because you come from an immigrant family? Do you think you are equally as I guess like laid back as other American students that have already been accustomed to American society?
Totally. Like I would say, because growing up, my parents teach me that once I have the education, I will like able to get a more high paying job, and it's more stable that way instead of like follow the step of like labor job, which is not sustainable later on. Like easy to be like laid off from work, but they teach me to like go to college, focus on school. And it's also why when we first moved here, they didn't make me to like have a part-time job or anything to help them out, but they be like working almost like overtime every week, and to make sure that provide me the good environment to learn.
Yeah, I definitely relate to what you said about your parents being a big role in how you pursue academics. I also would say that my parents pushed pursuing academics over anything else. They definitely prioritized me doing well in school rather than more so socializing and working part-time jobs. For the second question, it is, what do you think academic institutions can do to incorporate more multiculturalism into their schools, or what kind of activities or courses do you see already existing at UCI that you think are very beneficial to kind of encouraging and promoting cultural awareness and open-mindedness?
I like how we have different societies like VSA, Vietnamese association, student association, or like Chinese association, stuff like that. And also at the ARC, where we're gonna have like different cooking classes, and we also like incorporate like Vietnamese food, Japanese food, Mexican food, or even like Italian food too. So like really diverse, and I like how it's make everyone be connected and not feel left out.
Yeah, I would definitely say that UCI is a very predominantly Asian community. As a Chinese person, I too see a lot of Chinese culture, specifically with like the courses being offered, like language classes, and also just like history classes. I know there are a lot of like Asian American classes that people can take. Also, a lot of like workshops that focus on kind of promoting inclusivity and diversity. And another question is, how would you encourage other children of immigrants to maintain their native language whilst learning English? Do you think it is necessary and important for students to be bilingual?
Okay, I started learning English in grade 4, so I would say 12, no, not 12, like 9 years old, I would say. But like at the time, we don't have any like native speaker in Vietnam, so most of the stuff that I learned there is focusing on writing and reading. So by the time I got here when I was 15, I didn't really struggle with like reading and writing, but like listening and speaking is where I struggle the most. Like at some point, I would feel like I will understand what people are saying, but I don't know how to respond to that, or like I will be so confused what they're trying to like to get what they mean.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, oftentimes when children of immigrants want to learn English, it is very like textbook based rather than conversational, and it definitely is kind of like a switch when you try to transition to like American society versus like your native language. I also would say that it is necessary to be bilingual. Like, do you think the same? Like, is it necessary for kids to be bilingual? Like, what kind of benefits are there to bilingualism?
Absolutely. Like when the more language you know, the more the easier you feel connected to other people. Like even I go to school and then I talk with my friend and stuff in English, but like whenever I go home or talk with my parents through phone or something like that, we will like speak Vietnamese. And I'm going to be an aunt soon, so I would say like later on I will teach my nephew, to speak both Vietnamese and English, because like is in a way we will like connect to our roots.
Do you think it would be more beneficial for schools to offer dual language classes, or do you think like ELD programs would be better, or do you think a combination of both, like teaching classrooms in both English and say Vietnamese, or would you rather that teachers teach strictly in English but there be a side program for them to like learn or improve their English?
I did take ESL when I first came here. So like when I was 15, when I came here, like I attend high school as a freshman, and the first 3 years I would like attend ESL and like those classes. I would say it helped my transition a lot, because of the phase that we learn English, like when we kind of like trying to catch up with the language and stuff. I like how it goes slow enough for me to catch up. And then like the first year was rough because I didn't know anything, like language barrier and then culture shock and stuff like that. Like it was really like discouraging. But a year later, when I finally catch up with everything, yeah, things getting better.
And would you say that classrooms kind of accommodated you? Like, were the projects engaging? Were they interesting to you? Or were they really challenging? And did you often find yourself needing help in the classroom?
Okay, I think I would say it was hard at first. Like I told you how at first I kind of like trying to understand what people were saying, but like, in a way I don't really like know how to respond to what they're trying to like, make the point come across and stuff like that. So like at the beginning I would feel down. Also like it's affect my self-esteem in a way that I'll be insecure of the way I talk because of the accent and stuff like that. Then at some point you're like, randomly if I'm in a setting of like people laughing, and I will like, thought that like people laughing at me or like mocking at me, but it's just me being insecure at that time.
I see. Would you say that your teachers kind of helped make you feel more welcome then? Not just like socially, but like even academically. Do you think that the activities were ones that kind of helped you, or were they ones that kind of set you back?
I would say the teacher is really supportive and caring in a way that they create, like a comfortable environment and easy for me to reach out, like stay after school, something like that. And then, ask them to help me on my essay and stuff like that. They'd be really like supportive.
I see. Well, thank you so much for being my interviewee. I really had a good time talking to you, and I definitely relate to a lot of your experiences, especially since I am also a first-gen college student. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Hello, my name is Kaislyn Barrett, and this is my segment of the podcast on the topic of immigration and language barriers. Today, I have my guest who will now introduce herself.
My name is Magnolia Cassell, and the relationship that I have with Casey is that I'm her best friend.
Okay, so I'm going to start talking about immigration itself before moving on. So at what age did you immigrate to the U.S.?
I immigrated to the U.S. when I was around the age of 3 years old.
And then what generation do you identify yourself as?
I identify myself as a first-gen immigrant.
Okay, so what was it like when you first immigrated to the U.S.?
When I first immigrated to the U.S., I wasn't sure. I was still very young, so it's really difficult for me to have to look back on the past and try to remember it. But from what I remembered that it was snowing and that I was in another place. And it was definitely not the Philippines because it just felt different, the vibes were different, and the atmosphere was different. And usually the Philippines is a really humid place, but in the new place that I was in, I felt like it was very cold. So it's definitely not the Philippines.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to more educational questions. So the first one will be, how long did it take for you to learn English?
I feel like I learned English probably maybe a year or two. Maybe the same amount of years a normal child in the US would have, because I was still pretty young. Since I moved to the US when I was 3, yeah, it was probably around that time. Since I think as a kid, it's easier for you to learn a language when you're already in that country, I guess, and you're still young. So obviously you have that exposure to start at the same time as a normal US child would have. But I was still put into English proficiency classes because I was from a different country.
Since you did talk about English proficiency classes, what was it like having to do ELD classes, and did you really acknowledge that you were in one?
I didn't know that I was in one. I just felt like it was an extra class that I had to take because I was always asked to go into a different room with a few other students and one other teacher, and I didn't know until I had to receive an award for it.
Okay, so when did you at what age or when did you realize that you felt a bit more confident in learning English?
Probably around the age of, what's first grade?
6,
7. Okay, then yeah, that's probably when I knew. When I knew that I was speaking English, even though my parents talked to me in a different language at home.
So moving on, what challenges did you face when you first started learning English?
Definitely, it was difficult to communicate with my teachers or the teachers that I had in my ELD classes. That's probably why I was put in one in the first place. But I feel like those were probably the only challenges that I do remember.
And then, since you did say that you were having more of a difficult time adjusting to an English learning development or an English learning environment, what were the main difficulties you had when talking to teachers and stuff?
Probably trying to explain myself or having to present to the class or something, asking for things when you don't know what they are. I think that's it.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, since we are talking about teachers and faculty, did you receive any assistances besides your ELD teachers to take in account for your inability for speaking English?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So did you struggle with talking to peers during collaboration times or group work when you first had to learn English?
No, because in probably kindergarten or preschool, they were mostly just activities, and in kindergarten you're already learning your ABCs, so I feel me compared to the other students, I feel like we were on the same level of like learning.
Okay, so I'm gonna move on to about like cultural stuff about like America. So, what were like the main difficulties adjusting to the cultures of America? Some examples of like cultures, I guess it's kind of like the education system's kind of different from other countries, like with all the different periods, and then like grading system's different.
I don't have much to say about that because I wasn't enrolled into a school in the Philippines, and since I was only like 3, so I don't think I have much to say on that topic.
Okay, so what was it like to like be a first generation immigrant to move to the U.S.?
Definitely it feels like your parents have a lot of expectations for you. Since I have siblings, it mostly feels like you have to set a good example for them, and you need to show that you're exceptional at what you do and that you have plans, especially for your life ahead of you, especially for your future. Like, you need to show them that you're capable of doing certain things, like having good grades and going to good education facility and many things like that.
And then you are also a first generation student in college, right?
Yes.
Can you put a little bit of insight as you did start college this past school year?
Because of my parents and how they didn't have college, they didn't take college in the US, it's very difficult for them to get high paying jobs. And my mom, she didn't really she had to look for a job herself, and obviously she could only find herself working in the food chain. It's not a bad thing to work in the food chain, but that's what she chose to take a job in. And for me, I feel like I have to make up for what's lacking, which is like having to take school for them so that I can get a good job, and have to support them with a lot of money, and support them when they get older. And I have to get a job while I'm a student, so that I can also help them pay for bills and everything like that. Obviously, because my siblings can't take care of it for now, since they're still really young. So there's a lot of responsibilities that you have as a first generation college student because of that.
And then you did mention your siblings. Can you tell me their ages? And they were both born here, right?
Yes, they were both born here. My brother right now, he's 14, and my sister is 13.
Okay, so did you feel as if like your U.S. born siblings had an easier life than you did when you first immigrated?
Oh yes, definitely. I think for me, my parents were a lot more stricter. They wanted to make sure that I wasn't exposed to like all these bad things, when in reality you will be exposed to those things even when your parents aren't there. And that it feels like you as a first generation and the eldest sibling, it feels like you have to be the person that opens doors and opens your parents' minds, so that they aren't the traditional type of parents who restrict you from living a good life in the US.
Okay, and then I just have like one last question. It's gonna talk about your bilingualism. So, I guess just like having to fit in with having like your own family who speaks Tagalog, and especially at home in the Philippines, do you think like it's kind of different from being here when you have to speak English? Like, do they like judge you for like being more Americanized than being Filipino?
Yeah. I think when I talk to my family members in the Philippines, like they make fun of me for my accent when I try to talk to them in Tagalog. But that's only because like obviously I've been here for a while, and the only people that I can really rely on is through my parents, because they're the ones that talk to me in Tagalog, so I can copy their accents, do them. Even though I took like Tagalog Filipino classes here, it's not the same because it doesn't really feel like you're learning the language. It kind of feels like, well, from the classes that I took, it mostly feels like you're learning the culture more than you're learning the language. But yeah, aside from that, I think that they actually encouraged me to talk more in Tagalog because they don't want me to forget that part because they think that it's important.
And then your parents, did they like help you in anything like based on English or you were kind of just like on your own when you had to learn like?
Yeah, I was on my own for that.
Okay. But that should be it. Thank you for letting me interview you.
Yep, of course.